Hey guys, this is Bad Wolf. Now that Steven from Intrepid Studios has released the verbal NDA, I'd like to discuss my experience with the Alpha 1 test. So, the first thing I want to touch base on is Alpha. I kind of believe that this status in a game's life is, somewhat lost now. Mainly due to game marketplaces like Steam, where pretty much every other game is released as early access and kind of perpetually stays there and doesn't actually fully get released. um, Steven from Intrepid made a statement stating that this build that we are playing is here for us to find bugs. We are testers, and even though a lot of the people that are in the Alpha 1 have paid, big bucks to be a part of the Alpha 1. Yeah, we're playing the game, but we also kind of invested in his idea and Intrepid's idea for Ashes of Creation, and we're there to test this game out, find bugs, so we get the game that we've been waiting for. I want to talk about day one, when you finally load into the game. There were some issues getting in. Some people had, some issues with the play button or an infinite loading screen. I dealt with both. One thing I want to touch base on is, real quickly, is how incredibly responsive the Intrepid staff was at helping people with all these issues. One, and then two, identifying why it was happening, and then letting people know that there was going to be a fix for the next day. After load in, it was just awesome to see everything come to life that we've been shown, especially in its alpha state. So one of the first things I did was pretty much just run directly to mobs, and just wanted to test out the combat system. And I felt it was, well, in a very alpha state. Is it fun? Yeah. I like the fluidity of it. It's still rough around the edges. As Intrepid did state, everything is pretty much in its most basic form. I've played many types of MMOs with different types of combat, and if Intrepid left combat the same the way it is now, it wouldn't bother me. It also wouldn't really bother me if they decided to change it. It's just my personal opinion. Everybody has a preference, and that's that. But I'll just leave that subject as is to see how they flush out the combat style of the game. As I know everything is pretty much subject to change. One issue I did have, as the class I tested out all weekend, was the tank, was the onslaught or charge ability, where you basically charge the enemy. It's like super fast. It almost looks like you're teleporting into the character, but my character model literally ended up inside the enemy. In this case, I would literally have to do 360s to try and find the right player arc to fully cast my abilities to kill the mob, and some other times, if the character model of the mob was on the smaller side, I was able to jump out of them. This also brings up kind of my next concern, which is pathing. I know the game is still in its Alpha 1 phase, but there were plenty of times, and I know other players in the Alpha remember this, where you're trying to get into this cave to find a couple soldiers that went on a scout mission. And I know this was a zone that was, fairly heavily rubber banding the first couple of days. But I went back on day 3 without the rubber banding. And, as you're getting into this cave, there are a lot of rocks and ledges that are probably ankle high to your character, unless you're a dwarf, that you couldn't even jump onto or path onto. It was really weird. It was like you were just running into a wall. And, in most other games, your guy would either just, walk onto it, or you could just jump onto it. And you can even jump onto it. It was almost like they had a set path that you were supposed to run into this cave. I'm sure it's just I'm gonna strike that up to it just being Alpha One. Um, but I did run into this throughout the world. Not as drastic as the cave, but if I engaged like a giant spider in the forest or a troll, the pathing of the mob after I attack it would start glitching through trees. Or again, if I used my charge ability, while it was inside of a tree, we were both stuck in the tree. And I would have to kill the mob and then just kind of wiggle my mouse and, use all my movement keys at once and just kind of button smash to try and get out of the tree. Yeah, there are a couple concerns with the pathing and the character models and some of the world models that are in the game and how they're gonna flesh that out. But again, I'm just gonna strike that up to it being in its most bare form. Sure, as they test out the game, they run into the same issues, and so I'm sure it's noted somewhere. So there's an argument right now that this game is very niche based and not exactly inviting to the casual player. So I intentionally jumped into this weekend to play solo. Of course, I helped out a few people along the way that I came across in the open world. But my overall consensus was I felt the game was casual friendly to a degree. There will be many things that you can't do as a solo player, with endgame content such as, raid bosses, and I mean, you can't really node siege by yourself, right? Kind of the obvious stuff with any MMO, right? But one thing I do want to bring up is that there is a penalty of dying that I can see be a problem for the casual player who is subscribed monthly, logging on after work or school, maybe doesn't belong to a guild but has a group of friends that they tend to play with that are not always online. You might decide to relax and do some farming around your house, like in your node, and I'm not exactly sure if this is intended to be this way, but inside a node, which the nodes on the server that I was playing on, they were all level 3, and I mean, there was a group of players that just jumped me right next to a merchant. I was literally about to click on the merchant to sell some of my shards, and because that's the only loot we get in the game at the moment, they literally killed me at the merchant and took 2/3 of my shards. So when you die, you get XP debt, and you're able to get looted. I'm not entirely sure what they're going to be able to loot, once it's all kind of fleshed out and everything. But getting XP debt, while leveling up is one thing. It's, you deserve a penalty for dying. I think every MMO kind of has that. But to get XP debt in addition to losing items can be a bit harsh for a leveling player. Overall, as someone who backed the game from Intrepid's very first Kickstarter campaign, I'm very pleased to see, how the concept work and ideas I bought into just came to life. I mean, this game is beautiful, and it was incredibly fun to dive into as a solo player, to just explore where I wanted and when I wanted. Not being bogged down by this or that quest preventing me from moving on to different areas of the map was awesome. I had fun with the quests I was able to do, the dungeons I came across, and one thing I found that was incredibly refreshing to see was the player-to-player interactions, as far as, people finding really cool monuments or places on the map and sharing that in global chat, and seeing everybody kind of congregate together inside the nodes for elections, and it was just an overall really fun experience, and it kind of brought back that MMO in the RPG genre, where a lot of games nowadays are very kind of solo based. And so these are my thoughts on the Alpha 1 testing that happened over the weekend. I really enjoyed it, and for future Ashes of Creation content, please consider subscribing, and have a good one.